But I mentioned Nick Sirianni will do what he has to do to win a football game. And I think you saw that kind of manifest itself again.
Welcome to Pond Lee Hockey. We've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lee Hockey a call.
Eagles post-game show, Pond Lee Hockey, right for you here from the Ocean Casino. You're watching us on 6abc.com, also JAKIB Sports YouTube. The man covering the game for JAKIB Media today, down at the ballpark, John McMullen joining us. Hello, John. Good. So 4-0, first time since 2004. Got a little hairy at the end, but they did what they needed to do today, which was run the football, and that seemed to be the game plan that they caught on to maybe a little late in the second period. What is this second period thing going on? What did you see today?
Yeah, I mean, 14-0, that was sort of the theme after the game, the perseverance. Anytime you get down 14-0, look, and I think these conditions played into it. But as you mentioned, I was talking to Seth in the pregame show, and the mentality is to give Miles 15 to 18 touches, somewhere that in a regular game. But I mentioned Nick Sirianni will do what he has to do to win a football game. And I think you saw that kind of manifest itself again, whether it was Miles having a career high in carries and yards, Jalen Hurts carrying the football when he needed to. The environment demanded it, and the Eagles did it. Maybe they started a little bit slower, but Jason Kelce and Isaac Seumalo specifically were so dominant on that 1 second quarter drive when, Jacksonville came into this game as the #1 ranked defense against the run in the NFL. Granted, small sample size, but 55 yards a game. The Eagles passed that, I think, with 6 minutes and 9 seconds left in the second quarter, and bang, they were over 200 again against supposedly the best run defense in the NFL. When that offensive line gets going, the Eagles are tough to deal with.
Hey, John, what was the consensus from the locker room, from players in terms of just navigating on a sloppy field and howling winds?
Yeah, it's always difficult. I think the wind part of it, D-Gun, is bigger than the rain part of it. Although then you had this driving rain that was sort of going sideways. So you have a double whammy, so to speak. But a lot of quarterbacks think it's easier to throw the football when it's just rain, because defensive backs are the ones who don't know, obviously where the routes are going. When the wind comes into it, it's just really difficult to throw the football. It's really difficult with ball security. You saw it with Trevor Lawrence. The other part of the Jags coming in, +7 in the turnover ratio, leading the NFL. And all of a sudden, the quarterback turns it over 5 times. That, the Eagles deserve credit, Hassan Reddick, for a couple strip sacks. But a lot of that, the first 2 were unforced errors. A lot of that had to do with the weather and the environment, and the Jags didn't handle it well.
John, how impressed are you with this offensive staff's ability, to, in the moment, switch and change courses? It was obvious, they had one plan running the football today, but it seems like, those cross the formation runs, they were just absolutely getting stuffed. And as you watched in the second quarter, to Mike's point, in our last segment, that second touchdown drive, they started running the ball right at this defense. They weren't trying to, wait for pullers or anything. And I'd been saying in our conversation, when you're playing against a defense that's this fast, and you're playing against a defense that's this athletic, what you have to do is the running back has to hit the hole as the offensive linemen are engaged with the defensive tackles, because now they're on them right now. If you give them time to shed the blockers and get off, they're just too fast for that. And the Eagles, after a quarter and almost a third of a quarter, just kept banging their heads against the wall, and then all of a sudden they started just running right at this team.
Yeah, I mean, I think the demarcation line was 14-0, and I think that the Jags had a 4th and 3 from the Eagles' 34. Now you think about that. Doug Peterson tried to bury the Eagles right there. He was going for it, and that's the play where Trevor Lawrence just dropped the football. He dropped the football. I think he lost 14 yards. The Eagles were able to gather up the fumble. They had the short field. They went and scored. All of a sudden, that changed the game. And the drive you're talking about was when they tied it 14-14. 8 out of 9 plays on that drive were runs, and they went right at the heart of the defense, as you mentioned. And that's where Kelsey and Sayamala were just – it was that classic Jeff Stoutland double team surface block and just dominating. And they went right down the field running the football. And I think that drive, even though it just made it 14-14, I think that drive kind of stole the will of Jacksonville. And they kind of said, ooh, this is going to be tough. And, you know, the Eagles ended up scoring 29 straight points before Jacksonville got back on the board. It was quite the turnaround. It's rare when you see one play completely turn around the football game. I think that's exactly what happened on that Trevor Lawrence. And I call it, I don't want to go all tennis on you guys, but I call it an unforced error. He was just flushing out right and dropped the football because of the rain.
Yeah, he got a little skittish. Also, running it straight ahead, I neutralized Josh Allen a little bit. But also, John, depth showed up today. Mailata goes out. They put Driscoll in the game. And Slay goes out. And they had to play Epps and Josiah Scott a lot. And Opeta had to come in. This is a pretty deep team, at least it showed today.
Yeah, and, you know, I when I saw Jordan lead the game, I was a little concerned because Jack Driscoll's not a natural left tackle. Obviously, if you think about Andre Dillard's hurt as well, so you're down to your third left tackle essentially. He's barely taken any reps on the left side. He's always played right guard, right tackle. You know, maybe if it were a nice day, that would have affected the Eagles more. Maybe, in other words, if both teams were throwing the football all over the lots, maybe it would have shown up. So, in a weird way, maybe this muck kind of helped the injuries on the offensive line because Driscoll can go straight ahead, Opeta can go straight ahead. But if they had the pass block, I would have been a little bit more concerned, if that makes sense. So I think that was, you know, we have to look this week and see. Hopefully Isaac is okay. He got hurt later in the game. Jordan was out there in the third quarter trying to see if he could get back out there. So I don't think it's terribly serious, but we got to wait and see because those injuries could really affect this team going forward.
Hey John, unlike some people on this panel who won't give him their full due, I thought Jonathan Gannon called a pretty good game today. Considering the conditions, he didn't blitz as much as some would like him to. I'm not saying any names while we're sitting up here.
Blitz.
But I thought he blitzed when he had to. No blitz more important than the blitz he called that led to the Bradbury interception to take away momentum from Jacksonville, who could potentially have scored on that drive.
Yeah, well, 219 yards, D-Gun. This is 3 games in a row. This defense has played pretty well. And remember, 7 of those 21 points was a pick 6. That's not the defense.
Right.
So you're talking about a defense giving up 14 points, and you could say, well, the environment, if you want to make that excuse. But as Hassan Reddick pointed out, they played in the same elements. The Eagles rolled up. I got 401 yards. So they were able to do some things offensively. Jonathan Gannon's defense, they came in number 5 in the NFL. It's only getting better. So how high does he have to go before people start saying, oh, maybe he does know a thing or two about defensive football.
Well, you know I'm not going to let him get away with that, John. So
Here we
we're going to stay right here, and I'm going to just kick the facts to you. Okay.
Here we go.
So Trevor Lawrence drops a ball inexplicably.
He dropped two. So.
Well, there you go. So if he doesn't drop those two balls, especially the first one, he's got a guy wide open in the flat, or he can run for a first down if he doesn't drop that ball. So that wasn't anything that Jonathan Gannon forced. The only turnover that you can really say that Jonathan Gannon forced was the blitz where Bradbury intercepted the ball, as they were going into the red zone. Other than that, you got Hassan Reddick that beat the tackle twice. One time he actually sacked the guy. The other time and stripped it. The other time he just slapped the ball out of Trevor Lawrence's hands. Okay, so is that scheme, or is that a player making the play? It's a big difference. Now, the circumstances of what we saw as far as the weather and whatnot contributed to that. The thing I don't like is that he doesn't have an aggressive mindset. Okay, he let Trevor Lawrence, after Trevor Lawrence had a very lackluster first half. In the second half, he let him get going on that touchdown drive, on that interception drive. They got down into the red zone before he decided to come. He only came after Trevor Lawrence 3 times today. See, I have a problem with the fact that you don't want to heat quarterbacks up when you've proven to yourself and everybody else the last 2.5 weeks that it works. So why are you playing so passive instead of being definitive about who you are and what you're going to present to these young quarterbacks who can't handle the pressure?
Boy, now I'm going to have to defend JG, Seth. I didn't want to have to do that. But, Trevor Lawrence completed 11 passes today. I mean, I don't know. This is the modern NFL. Now, granted, you're right. The conditions play into that. But, I mean, as a defensive coordinator, he's got to understand what those conditions are. And maybe this is an opportunity where you don't have to risk things on the back end. Oh, because, by the way, you don't have Avonte Maddox. Of course, by the way, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's still learning how to play safety. So this is a perfect environment to sort of maybe, Christian Kirk, the biggest playmaker from a wide receiver standpoint. I think he had 2 catches over 9 targets. Now, you're right in the fact that Trevor Lawrence, and I mentioned that play, that's a completely unforced error. But then you go later in the game, Seth, they had that third one quarterback sneak that he also fumbled. Arguably, that's an unforced error as well. And then he fumbled 2 other times and he threw the interception. He was rattled. Part of that is this is a guy who hasn't been turning the football over. Jacksonville was +7 coming into this game, number 1 in the entire NFL. So I do think the Eagles had him rattled. I do think he was worried. I do think that causes some of the things. But where I will agree with you 100%, and you know this better than anybody, and Nick Sirianni says this all the time, show me a good coach and I'll show you good players. You can't be successful without good players. So, yeah, did Hassan Reddick make plays? That's what he's paid to do. But I can't blame Jonathan Gannon because Hassan Reddick makes big plays. That's what he's here for.
I'm not blaming him, but I guess my mindset might be just a little bit outdated because I don't ever look at defensive football from a position of risk. I look at it from a position of forcing the issue. I mean, we live in an era now where offensive coaches, they dictate to defensive coordinators, by personnel and the rules of the game and everything else. They dictate to you who and what you can be. See, I played in an era where, from a defensive perspective, we dictated personnel and everything else. And I see other defenses around the league who have coordinators who have an aggressive mindset that dictate rather than being dictated to. And I want to see this defense and this defensive coordinator evolve to a position where they dictate to offenses so that they can be more dominant, because the more dominant they are moving forward, the better it's going to bode for the offensive side of the ball and the special teams.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think everything is contextual. In different areas, you could be more aggressive. But as I said, we're talking about 30 teams as a larger view. And if you're number 3, whatever the Eagles are this week, because they're going up from number 5, if you're number 3 of 32, contextually, that's pretty good. Now, it's still a small sample size, but we're starting to get into a larger sample size. We're through 4 games. So the point is, if you compare what the Eagles defense is doing against the other 31 teams, they're well above the mean. They're well above average. They're a top 5 defense. So, yeah, some of it is, and I agree. I've had this discussion with Jim Schwartz many times when he was here. Defense is a reactionary thing. You have to see what the offense is doing and react to it. And that's more true today than it was in different eras when you could intimidate teams and you could hit teams at the great defenses you were on. Seth, a lot of those plays you guys made, there's 15-yard flags today. And all of a sudden, you're down the field and you got an explosive play for the offense because that's how they're calling the game. So,
Right.
Yeah, I see your point. And by the way, I like more aggressive defense. I can't stand quarters zone. Everybody in this league plays it. It drives me insane. But, they're up against it from a defensive standpoint. You can only play with the rules you're given, and it becomes more difficult for the defensive side, it seems, every single season.
John, just a couple things that I had to quibble with today, and one of them was, I talked about it earlier, A.J. Brown with a who for what effort on the interception. But late in the game, when they're trying to salt the game away, they go for it on 4th and 3, did not make it, and give Jacksonville the ball. Of course, he coughed it right back up to him, which preserved it. But would you have kicked a field goal there?
Yeah, I would have kicked a field goal. I mean, and we asked Nick about that after the game, and he didn't want to answer the question, which is a little bit of a surprise because they won the game. So it's sort of like a footnote at this point. But I think because he knows he made a mistake and he didn't want to really discuss it. Look, they were great on 4th downs until they weren't. And 4th downs give it, and they take it away. You saw it. The Eagles were 3 of 4 before that A.J. Brown. They missed on the 4th down there. So they were really putting a lot of pressure on the Jacksonville defense by being aggressive. Conversely, Doug Peterson, who was sort of at the forefront of that when he was here, that Trevor Lawrence play that changed the game was 4th and 3. And as he was rolling out, he dropped the football. You go from 14-0 to think you're going to put this game away to, oh no, here come the Eagles back. So that's one of those things. I do like that the Eagles are aggressive. I do think it puts incredible pressure on the defense. And I think more often than not, it's the right thing to do.
Hey, John, I want to ask you a question. We were debating a short while on this show. Right now, as we sit 4 weeks into this season, are the Eagles the best team in the NFL right now?
Yeah, I think they played like the best team. I don't know if they are the best team. I think they played better than anybody else, if that makes sense. I still think Buffalo is more talented, and they struggled today, but they've had some injury issues, especially at safety, as we know. So a lot of this is attrition. Is Jordan Mailata going to be healthy? Is Isaac Seumalo going to be healthy? Darius Slade looked like he was having a good time after the game, so I think he's going to be fine. So much of this is attrition, but I think through 4 games, I think the Eagles have played better than anybody else in the NFL.
John, listen, great stuff. We appreciate you hanging in there, and I guess we'll talk to you next week in Arizona.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, John McMullen covering the Eagles for JAKIB Media. So quickly, before we go to break, we really didn't talk about that 4th and 3 that much. I know if they get the first down, the game's over, and they had converted a couple of 4th and 3s in the game. But why wouldn't they have kicked the field goal? You kick the field goal, it's a simple play. It would have been a 38-yard field goal or something. That cashes the game out. Why would they not do that? And as fate would have it, they give the ball back to Jacksonville there.
Data analytics.
Yes. I knew he was going to say that because I'm thinking the same thing. And that's my problem with today's brand of football right there.
All right. Listen, it seems like a simple decision to me to kick that 3.
Hey, listen,
But look, that's our old school mindset. That's simple football.
Is it logical?
No, it is. That's what I'm
32 to
saying.
21, they can't come back.
Yes, I'm agreeing with you. But this doggone analytics come into play.
But you know what the difference is? The difference is if it works out, then you're a genius. If it doesn't, it makes for great debate this entire week. You know what I'm
Which
saying?
it is, which it will.
Absolutely.
It's making for a great debate. All right, let's take a break. We're going to come back. We have much more to come on the show, including our game ball presentation. That's coming up on the Eagles postgame show, sponsored by Pond Lehocky, Ocean Casino, 6abc.com, and JAKIB Sports Media. Back after this.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pond Lehocky, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.